Hey, before we start the show, just wanted to let you know that No Inner Monologue is available on all your favorite podcast providers. And now on YouTube. Don't forget to check us out on social media at No Inner Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and No Inner Monologue on Facebook. Now, enjoy the show. Previously on No Inner Monologue.
I mean, the book that I did a lot of my research with refers to it as the one true sport, and I believe Dwen's looked at this book, and I think you're going to want to check it out once we're both done with it.
Oh, yeah, Joe, is there an audio book of this?
No, there isn't. It's a comic book.
Nice.
So there's more pictures than words. So I think
is it a pop-up book?
No, it's not. But we
Nice.
could work something out for you.
Every 5 minutes, you just come in and clothesline me.
Just punch you right in the face.
No, that's not allowed. It's an elbow shot.
Right?
It's
Yeah, it's like
forearm.
a forearm hit, right?
Yeah.
Right across the mouth. Yeah.
Yeah.
From the 7-ish Studios in Mississauga, Ontario, it's the No Inner Monologue podcast. Try and push record.
Bienvenidos al No Inner Monologue, capítulo número 82. Y aquí estoy con Joey Mangione y con Suel, su pareja, de partes unknown. Duen, Norona y yo, Manuel Luján, tu tío favorito.
Espeluznante, tío Manny.
That sounds about right.
That does not sound right. I've never heard that word before ever.
There's no way nobody has called you Spanish creepy.
Espeluznante, tío Manny.
Yeah. Apparently, if you just say it on its own.
Now,
it's different.
what does that translate to, Dwen?
The good people at Google say that translates to creepy Uncle Manny.
There you go. I will attest to the good people at Google. They their translations aren't that bad. I've used it sometimes when I'm writing like back and forth with my cousins in Italy. So
Apparently, this is the word for creepy.
Horripilante.
Horripilante.
Yeah. It means either horrifying, creepy, grisly, eerie, lurid, or hairy.
Are you reading off my resume?
Yes.
man.
I'm reading off the HR notes from the Philippines.
Oh my god. Oh boy, there's a lot there.
man. So
Hey guys, it's all three of us in a room again. I know I brought this up, but it's been how long since we've done all this? Since the three of us.
God, the best days of my life was.
It's been the best days of Dwen's life.
What the fuck are you singing?
yeah,
I don't know.
Also, what did you say in Spanish?
but it's all.
Oh,
over
I said
now.
welcome to No Inner Monologue, episode 82. I have Dwen Norona. No, sorry, I have Joe Mangione and hailing from parts unknown, Dwen Norona.
Is unknown not a word in Spanish?
I don't know the word unknown.
Wow,
Wow.
he doesn't know unknown.
Well, that's
His
huge.
knowledge of the word unknown
is unknown.
is unknown.
Jesus.
That somehow works
Yes.
in such an upsetting way.
Tio Manny, Tito Manny, all the Mannys.
Espeluznante, Tito Manny.
Yeah, you'd be a worse. You'd be a heel. Straight up.
In life?
No, you are a heel in life.
So, I've had the interesting distinction the last 2 weeks of doing a solo show with each of you.
That's not a solo show.
I meant not having both of you here at the same time, which was an interesting experience.
It was fine for me. Both weeks.
Yeah, you weren't here for
Yes.
the second one.
I was enjoying my time in Orlando.
And then you listened to the episode.
By the way, I one of the things that killed me last week was you guys were talking about the 2 out of 3 falls matches that used to happen back in the day.
Okay, now fill me in
Yeah.
and correct me. Now, that whole thing, like regarding Buddy Rogers, right? It
Yes.
was Buddy Rogers.
Yes.
Was it because the champion, the guy they wanted to crown as champion of the NWA,
Yeah.
did the guys at the NWA sort of
The
pull a
NWA.
fast one and just try to make it under one fall?
No, I think what it was. There used to be a lot of. I think. Okay, first of all, just an aside note, you guys were talking about the 2 out of 3 falls matches
Yes.
and how they don't happen all the time anymore. which killed me because I had the night before when I was at NXT, the main event was a 2 out of 3 falls match.
Was it?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
They have 2 out of 3 falls matches on Raw a lot these
days.
It's a
thing? Okay, I didn't know.
No, I know. But the whole thing with the NWA and
do they still do
actually,
it with like title matches?
Yeah, for those of you who didn't listen last week, well, that was a title match, the main event.
So they still do it mainly like because I know
Raw started doing it more recently, like in the last 2 months.
Okay, so they're bringing them back.
Yeah, well, okay, so Raw bought it back because of this whole Vince McMahon has this weird rule about wrestling not happening during commercial breaks. So they bought this weird like 2 out of 3 falls match. A first fall would happen, then the match would stop for a commercial break and then come back. It's weird. But the main event of NXT was a 2 out of 3 falls match, and it was kind of awesome because they did it differently. There was like the first match was a regular falls match, the second match was a street fight, and then the third fight happened to be a cage match. So it was all those. It was a surprise cage match.
Okay.
Yeah. So. No, the whole Buddy Rogers thing, for those who didn't listen at least, is the sort of start of the whole WWE, WWF
Yeah,
thing.
I know I brushed over that, and I'm sorry about
the first champion.
To all of you wrestling fans, and I'm saying this to Dwayne specifically, because I know we got a lot of shit wrong, but I tried my best to try, whatever was I said anyways was correct. I tried so hard, and I'm sorry if I fucked up.
Yeah, it's fine. But I think like the whole idea was that these guys, the WWF or the WWF at the time, wanted to start their own promotion,
right?
And so they build, Buddy Rogers as their champion, and then NWA was like, no, this is the guy we want to be, and they were the more powerful of the two.
So at the time. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
It's funny. There was anyways, they
because I know
they
that
decided,
was a bit of a power struggle because wasn't it that the New York territory, which is the WWF, they were one of the, if not the strongest in the NWA at that time,
right?
So they were the only real promotion that could afford to distance themselves from the NWA.
Any big wrestling company that you hear about these days at some point had some connection to the NWA. Like that's just the way it was. They were just that big.
It was just the beginning of wrestling.
But they were strong for a long time, and they still exist. The NWA still exists. But Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins owns them.
What?
Who?
Yeah.
Well, if you got off your phone for a couple minutes, are you calling your wife?
No, she's calling me.
So okay. Hey, welcome to the podcast, man.
Pick it up.
It's like you've never been.
I know, eh?
Pick it up.
Talk to your wife.
No, I'm okay.
Can I ask which wife it is?
Oh, Jesus Christ, Joey.
Is it your Filipino wife?
It's none of the wives.
Is it your
it's
Filipino?
my wife.
It's none of the wives.
Is it your Filipino girlfriend? Is it Tash? Because we haven't heard her voice in a millennia.
Yeah.
We heard it at the top of this episode.
Yeah, but those don't count.
And you spoke to her at your birthday, which was like a month ago.
That was so long ago. It was so long ago.
Can you stop saying that it wasn't that long ago?
It was a while ago.
It was literally a month ago.
You're saying this because you've literally forgotten my birthday. Because you asked me what my birthday was earlier today, and I'm like, dude, you like called me on my birthday. You actually called me on my birthday and wished me a happy birthday, which thank you again.
It wasn't for you. He thought he was calling somebody else.
He thought he was calling his wife.
Yeah.
Danica.
No, yeah, Billy Corgan owns the NWA now.
Really?
Yes. And they're actually going to start recording a TV show in the fall. Where that ends up airing, I'm not entirely sure.
YouTube.
Yeah, maybe. You know many wrestling promotions have started through YouTube.
Would you say he's
a massive, massive wrestling fan?
No,
this
I know
is his
that.
second promotion that he's owned.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, would you say he's trying to bring back the NWA, or has it existed in this time and sort of
it's existed?
Been in the shadows type of thing?
So I think at one point last week, Manuel was talking about TNA, Total Nonstop Wrestling,
right,
which has evolved into Impact Wrestling now.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm just gonna share a hilarious story about TNA.
Oh no!
When they first started off, they were like a pretty mom and pop almost shop. Remember? And there was this one time Dwayne came over and they had the Ultimate X match.
You went to his
but
house?
the X fell off the top,
Yeah.
and they needed to restart the match and put the X back up.
So the way they used to have, so like some of the promotions we're going to talk today, TNA, Total Nonstop Action, whatever. When they first started, they were called the NWA TNA,
Right.
and so they were the new the National Wrestling Alliance's Total Nonstop Action television show.
Did you just take a picture of your dick?
Yes.
Gross.
My phone doesn't have that kind of range, man.
It doesn't have that
Kind of zoom. So when they first started off, they would have these like their sort of calling card to separate themselves from the WWE was they had these like high flyers. They had a division called the X division, which was a bunch of cruiserweights, but you could be any weight limit and go and join it, kind of thing. So they had a match because the ring was 6 sides, so the 6-sided ring. They didn't have a 4-sided ring,
So it was kind of like
but not an octagon because that's 8
kind.
sides.
It was a hexagon.
Yes. So and that's taken from a
Fucking bringing
Mexican
geometry to the
Mexican
masses.
promotion called Triple A. Their ring is 6-sided as well.
Oh, the Triple A wrestles in a hexagon.
Yes.
See, geometry.
So the way the rings would work is they'd have these matches called an Ultimate X match, and so where it worked was they would have on each of the posts would have a longer posts. There'd be cables going into the middle, and there would be an X in the middle or a briefcase or something, and the wrestlers had to somehow get on top and get the X or the briefcase or the title belt or something. So in one of these, and if you got the X, it meant you got a title shot. If you got the briefcase, whatever. So
it's like what now the WWE does, like the Money in the Bank match.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
the title
But
match,
imagine that, though,
like
without a
ladders
ladder.
match. Without a ladder.
Without a ladder, you have to get up there without a ladder.
Gotta
So you gotta
Spider-Man
like,
that
you
shit.
gotta literally jump up
Yeah,
or climb on your opponent.
yeah.
That's insane.
Those
Or
matches were
catch
great.
the X when it falls.
Yeah. So the one time we watched it, the X fell down, and it just happened to be the one time we watched at Manny's house, so he'll never forget that.
Well, Manny was really excited to have you at the house.
I'll get
He
excited.
doesn't get many visitors.
I was there for the wrestling.
I was at Manny's house earlier to
That's unfortunate.
we installed some plumbing fixture, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
And how'd you pay him, Manny, for the services that he provided you?
With love.
He gave me stuff, not money,
Yeah,
just stuff.
you
Yeah, it sounds
barter
like I gave you.
system.
It's
I
like
gave you a STD. Jesus.
well, maybe I was by your.
You would. He's just one in a long line then.
I feel like your Filipino wife.
Oh,
Jesus Christ, guys! I have.
Sorry, no, your Filipino girlfriend.
You guys are the worst.
are you cheating on your Filipino wife?
I'm not cheating on anything.
They all know about
They're
each
not
other.
even people to
Oh,
him.
they're things now.
They're
Wow,
things.
I'm
They're
not
not
cheating.
even
No.
people to him.
disgusting.
You guys.
You creepy uncle.
I really am a heel.
I don't know, man. By this conversation, maybe we're the heels.
Nope.
You guys have been the heels for fucking 81 episodes.
I'll be the
How
heel.
dare you?
I'm happy to be a heel.
You would be a heel. You'd make a hell of a manager.
I'd make a hell of a manager.
You would.
Thank you. Like, the mouth from the south.
More like Mr. Fuji, only Italian.
So Bruno Sammartino.
Who? Thank you, Dwen, because I felt it was weird. Manny, what did you say about Bruno
I said he was alive, and
Sammartino?
well, it turns out he's dead.
And didn't I ask you? Are you sure
You said he
he's
was.
still alive?
You said he was in amazing shape.
I was like, wait a minute. Something did not feel right.
Yeah, his heartbeat.
non-existent.
I was thinking Jesse the Body Ventura.
No, you weren't.
I was.
Okay. I'm not even that big of a wrestling fan. How do you get those two guys confused?
I don't know.
You had a whole conversation about Italians in wrestling. There's no way you thought Jesse the Body Ventura.
I mean, I could understand if you mixed up Macho Man because he's of Italian heritage.
Is he?
Yeah.
Polfo.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's of Italian
Fair
heritage.
enough.
You know what I thought would be a great match?
Oh God, here we go.
Oh no.
Thunder Lips versus Bonesaw.
Yeah,
You've seen that a
I
million
know.
times.
But in
like-
those
it's like-
gimmicks.
it's like,
You've seen that like a
dude, those
trillion
are pretty
times.
much the same gimmick.
Okay, we're moving past this.
Sorry. Okay,
So,
thank you for clearing up a few things,
Yes.
Dwayne.
anyways, but the one thing about the NWA that's sort of important is that they were also they also had branches outside of North America.
Did they now?
They did. So they would reach into a place like Mexico, and let's talk to our resident Mexican, Manny, about this.
No, I'm going to
No?
share a quick... Yeah, well, yes,
Oh,
but...
Can I hear
actually,
another quick story?
You're the worst at quick
Well,
stories.
somebody who went to Japan and had really boring stories. You seem to have a lot of exciting stories when nobody was around.
So my mother-in-law, as you guys know, she's from Trinidad.
Yes.
My mother-in-law actually has a picture where she met Ric Flair when he was wrestling there at the NWA in like I'm gonna say the 70s, maybe if not earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
So the
But was
NWA has reached all the way out
Isn't your
to
mother-in-law?
Trinidad.
But isn't the story here that your grandfather-in-law was like really close friends with Ric Flair?
Well, I was gonna get to that, and yes,
It?
no, I was actually, yeah. So my mother-in-law's father, him and Ric Flair. Every time Ric Flair came down to Trinidad, which apparently was, according to my mother-in-law, at least two or three times a year, they would just go out drinking after when Flair had a match. They would just go drinking afterwards.
That seems like the most regular Ric Flair
I
story
feel like
ever.
I feel like this is a story we should have asked Mona to be on.
No.
Okay.
I mean, Ric Flair goes drinking with man in other countries. Sounds very much like just a Ric Flair story.
Okay, good enough.
But the
Yeah.
NWA belt was sort of the big belt, and what came with it was big stars like Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes coming to your promotion if you were an NWA affiliate. So I think
Now, one thing I read,
Yeah.
like, and specifically because what I know specifically in Mexico they did this, they actually had a weight class
yes,
compared to American wrestling,
yeah,
where it's just like almost like a free for all,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah, that's why it's called Lucha Libre, freestyle wrestling.
wait, that goes against what he's saying.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what I'm saying.
Oh, is it?
Are you even listening?
I am listening.
Are you
yes.
sure?
Yeah.
It's called Lucha Libre is called freestyle wrestling because of the style of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't it translate to free fight?
No.
So what does it translate to?
Libre means free, and lucha means like
Fight.
Fight.
yeah, but like freestyle fighting. That's kind of,
Isn't that what I just said?
no, you didn't. Okay, whatever.
The
This
literal
beer's hitting me hard.
Who would have thought that the lightweight couldn't deal with one beer?
What the fuck? This thing's hitting me harder than I thought. Fucking Peroni?
Okay.
And this episode's been brought to you by Peroni.
Peroni, apparently. Jesus. Okay, but yeah, that's sort of the. Well, if you've seen any sort of Mexican wrestling, if you've seen
Right.
any of it, they're very high. For the most, they have different weight classes, but they're generally like a high flying, acrobatic style, right?
Right.
But Manny, you were going to talk about some of this, and now
So-
you decided to just drink in the corner like a weird drunk.
Like a creepy uncle.
Yeah.
He's really living up to the moniker.
We've given you
these
like
days.
3 segues to start, and
the-
you're like, go, 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 go.
This beer is hitting me really hard.
Fucking Italian beer. I've never had it before.
Okay.
Okay,
I don't know if I should be offended by that.
no.
You don't drink beer at all. That's why.
I've actually my family has actually
fucking
always
Manny.
been like my family has always actually been big fans of the Mexican style wrestling, like the luchadors. Whenever my father used to, and anyone used to actually watch any of the WWF stuff, they always wondered where the Mexican wrestlers are. Where are these luchadors?
That's why Max Mini was there, buddy.
Yeah, but there wasn't as many. There wasn't such a proficient presence there. Right now, what ended up
Your dad
what
didn't
ends
like
up happening
Eserios?
though, yeah, what?
Your dad didn't like Eserios?
Yes, I'm not sure who that is.
Okay.
What about like Eddie Guerrero's dad or is it his uncle?
Whole family.
Yeah,
All the Eddie Guerrero, like there was Dory
All the
Guerrero. There was his dad, Gory Guerrero. Then there was Eddie. Chavo's the younger one. There's a Eddie. There was a Gory Jr., I think, and there was one more. There were 3 boys.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they
And
all
now his
had
daughter's
kids. And
wrestling.
Chavo Senior.
Now his daughter's wrestling, if I'm not
She's
mistaken.
been wrestling for a little while. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but going back to what I was saying, the Mexican wrestling style is not only, I mean, it's not just famous, in Mexico, but it actually is one of the most famous ones probably all over South America. And a lot of other wrestling promotions have taken roots from it as well, like the Japanese wrestling style. They have a lot of the high-flying, acrobatic, basically it's almost like gymnasts going at each other. That was kind of the style of it. It's not meant for it's meant to entertain. It's meant to wow the crowd, right? I mean, as opposed to the North American style where it's just, big powerhouses doing their thing. This was now
big burly men
coming out all sweaty, right?
Gross.
But there was also
close your diary and continue reading.
You took it to a gross place. I started there, but you took it worse.
Okay, so Manny, in whichever country you're from this week, is it popular? What style of wrestling do they have there?
I guess you can say.
You can't
Costa
figure
Rica.
out which country you're from.
I don't know what you want me to say. But in my family from all of South America, they actually, every time you mention wrestling, they will always bring up the Mexican wrestlers. Like my grandmother, she always brings up El Santo.
Everybody should always bring up El Santo. I was
Isn't
going to
he
wear
like-
my El Santo mask today and I forgot.
Okay.
Oh God.
Are you all right there?
Yeah, I am. I just burped up because of the beer.
Don't blame the beer for your unhygienic ways.
Dare you blame my Pironi? Anyways, I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
By no means was El Santo the first luchador to wear a mask.
No.
Correct.
No.
Right? Is that correct?
Okay, but
was he like the most famous though?
The man was the Hulk Hogan of Mexico, man.
So one thing I have to stress though is that it wasn't the man behind the mask, because a lot of luchadors, they wore the mask with the exceptions of the Guerreros for some more degree. But a lot of the more famous one, they wore the mask, like Mil Máscaras, El Santo, as we just mentioned. But do you know that they
Dr.
wore...
Wagner.
Yeah. They wore the mask outside of the ring. Their life was that luchador personality.
Yeah,
they would have dinner. They would be in $1 million suit, and they'd be wearing their mask, right?
Yeah.
They would be going to a funeral. They'd be wearing a mask. Most El Santo was buried in his mask.
Yeah,
El Santo's not live and well.
I actually.
That's why we have El Hijo de Santos.
Yeah, El Hijo de Santo.
I read a story.
El Hijo, El Hijo.
El Hijo.
Hijo. Okay.
Hijo.
What does that mean?
Son.
Ooh,
Yeah, this is the son of El Santos.
I like it already.
And that mask thing means a lot. It is big. Okay, there's two things when it comes to masks. One, El Santo has to give his mask, has to give the permission to let his son use the mask or whoever used the mask.
So it's like it's inherited down.
It's inherited down.
You can't like.
And
It's an insult to put
So
it on.
so if like for example, let's play a little game of pretend. You are a great luchador who wears the mask.
Yes.
And I am, let's just say, your son. If I want to wear the mask, I have to ask your permission, and you have to will it down to me, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yes. And there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is an entire story about, and we might link this to our Instagram if I can find it, because I can't remember which wrestler passed down the mask, but there is an entire lawsuit and craziness when it comes down to one famous wrestler passed down the mask to his son, and his son basically would not give the rights of that mask to his son.
Oh, he just held on to it. And
He held on to it and then monetized it in different ways. And blah, blah, blah.
Really?
So these masks mean a lot to people. El Santo only took it off once on a talk show.
Oh my
And didn't he
God.
die
and he
next
died
week?
the next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But El Santo was a big deal, not just because he was, he had started off as a bad guy. They call Rudo in Mexico.
Okay, what are the difference? Manny, you might know this, but what are the differences between technicals and rudos?
Technicals are, just like the name says, they're more technical wrestling. They're more focused on the showmanship, the wow. They're there to wow the crowd. They're not there to piss them off.
The good
right?
guys.
Yeah, the good guys. Right?
Yeah.
The rudos, they're there to, they are athletic as well, but they're the ones that do the more underhanded moves.
Rudo.
Yeah, very.
I point at you,
yeah.
Lujan.
Now,
They're
I
the
actually
ones
read
that'll
some.
do the
yeah.
low blows and all that
I read
stuff.
somewhere though, though the rudos are will do the dirty moves or whatever, but they're a lot more of a bash and almost like a brawler type of wrestler.
They can be.
Like
They
the
can,
Guerrero,
right?
You can consider the Guerreros rudos.
I don't know. I would never consider Eddie Guerrero Rudo. He's always a face in my heart. But
I don't
but
think he started off as a rudo though. I think he was he flip flopped quite a bit in his North American wrestling, from what I remember.
Well, he was a bad
anyways.
guy. He was a bad guy in WCW. He was a bad guy when he came to WWE. The guy was just so damn charismatic. What is wrong with you?
Just remembering one of the best promos that him and Chavo had.
I don't know if I like
when they
remembering things.
When they were going
burned
around
me.
ripping people off, their lie, cheat, steal one. They're like, "Ma'am, your pool's taking on water. We have to fix it." It was fucking awesome.
That was the thing. That guy was so funny and so charismatic. They had gone through these like that people couldn't help but love him, you know. But I think, I think though Technico and Rudo were like the terms that started it all. Like in terms of being very literal. This guy, like Manuel was saying, this guy's very technical. This guy's sort of a brawler or whatever. And then they just ended up becoming more. Technico is a good guy. Rudo is a bad guy.
Like what I was reading though, in terms of that, like apparently like the rules in Mexican wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, stop me if I'm wrong, obviously, but what I read was that the rules in Mexican wrestling are a lot more like strict on that. Like if you're a Rudo, you're more likely to be a brawler.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, specifically in Mexico, they loved the fact that their heroes are the much more technical wrestlers compared to
I can see that.
But compared to North American wrestling or American wrestling in general, where sometimes the crowd will side more with a brawler as opposed to a more technical wrestler.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
I think fans, I mean, in Mexico, it sounds like the fans, like somebody, like Manolo said, who will wow the crowd. They're there to see something they can't see on the, every day, right? Yeah. Same with wrestling to a certain extent. North American wrestling relies a lot, and all wrestling relies a lot on charisma. Like you can be an amazing wrestler, but if you don't have the charisma, you're not gonna like go that one extra step.
The Bobby Lashley effect.
Yeah. Well, but you know what I mean. You can be an amazing wrestler, but if you don't have that, if you don't have that certain something that hits with the crowd,
right?
You're not going to be,
like to put it into context here, or to make it relevant. The wrestler Sin Cara, right?
Yes.
He came over from AAA and into WWE, and he was a big hit. Like the man did things that, like, at that time you were like, what the fuck? How the fuck is this even possible?
And Sin Cara has one of the best masks ever.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I love it. I like the times I've watched wrestling with you guys, and
I have the mask. I love it.
it.
It's basically
it's
Sin
a
Cara.
beautiful mask.
Sin Cara means no face.
Yeah.
So he has a mask that essentially covers up his entire face. You can't see his eyes, and it's just gorgeous. Like the way the mask is, it's just gorgeous.
And so WWE, they bought out that character. But he could not get over. Like, he could not cut a promo. He wasn't as charismatic. He wasn't as over as they expected him to be, like they would have in Mexico. But so he went back to AAA wrestling. But now WWE owns the character Sin Cara. So he went back to his original gimmick of Místico.
Yes.
Right. So is he still active?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So he's still. Go
I
ahead.
think with Sin Cara though, the problem was he had moved from WWE. He had moved from Mexico to WWE, and there is a. You're expecting this. If you can't speak English, if you can't, and he couldn't, and if you can't speak English, and if you can't like be, talk, I think there's physical, there's emotional charisma and there's physical charisma. So there's people who have, there's people who have it, and I think this guy's strength was physical charisma. If he had the opportunity to wrestle and everything, it would have been like absolutely amazing.
So would, like, say a manager really helped him? Maybe,
But
right?
usually managers are with bad guys.
Yeah,
and that's the other thing too, right? I mean, were they trying to push him as a heel, as a face?
He was a face. Because look, if a guy can pull off amazing moves, if a guy can fly in the air, he doesn't need to speak. You see him wrestle, you'll be wowed by it. You'll want to come see it.
That's gross, Manny.
But with a guy like Sin Cara, he got injured very early into his reign,
right? And
so that took off a little bit of the magic, and then you don't get to see that kind of style again. So you don't see that. Then he's not talking. It's just sometimes it's bad timing. But with a guy like El Santo was an amazing wrestler, but he had like that charisma. People were like enamored by him. This guy was a bad guy before, but he comes back as like the saint, and he comes, he's this cool. He's like this, like.
He was it.
He was Hulk Hogan, and he had like the cool look to him, and you see him in a suit, and he's a smart looking guy. But this dude was in movies, as El Santo. He was in comic books as El Santo. He was a big deal. Yeah. And that, that was the thing about Mexico. It's like their wrestlers would be larger, literally larger than life, right? They look like superheroes. They're all in movies. They're all in... So I can see why, like, in Mexico, and it's so ingrained in their culture, the masks mean something.
Mm-hmm. They mean a lot. Just to quickly add to that, so a lot of retirement matches, or a lot of matches that mean, like the big match that means something, that you're putting something on the line, is the mask match.
Mask versus hair, or mask versus mask.
Right.
Matches,
Yeah. So what they would do is, if you lose, you take off the mask.
Yeah.
And that's it. You don't put the mask on ever again.
And then basically your wrestling career is done.
You can either retire or you wrestle without a mask.
Or you wrestle without a mask.
So,
okay.
Actually,
stop you there.
Mysterio?
Do you guys want to take a quick break to hear from our buddy?
Yeah.
How's it going, everyone? Jesus here, aka Tyrant Dominus, the host of the Convoluted Podcast, where I get a chance to talk with people from around the world and from my own backyard about the things they love, careers they have, hobbies they enjoy, projects they're working on, and along the way, they tell us some wacky stories, and we get to play some games. Join us on the Convoluted Podcast, everywhere podcasts can be found.
Y ahora regresamos otra vez. Continuamos.
I guess that was the first fall.
I guess so.
Sorry, you were saying about the mask, like wrestling without the mask or whatever.
No, but okay, so there's two things.
That must be a lot easier, though.
Well, there's two things. Well, it's kind of both ways, right? If you take off the mask, now everybody knows you. I'm sure there are wrestlers in Mexico who are like, I want to go for a nice dinner and not be bothered by fans. I'm just going to take off my mask today and go out.
That might have been my phone.
Yeah.
We just leveled up, guys.
Yeah. In Mexico, a really big deal is and I can't say it in Spanish, so you might have to look this up. But it's I'm talking to Joe. Is the hair versus mask matches, or mask versus mask matches?
I read about this. This is
hair
crazy.
versus mask matches are huge. You basically have a stipulation, and it's you have long hair, I have a mask. We wrestle against each other. Whoever loses, if I beat you, you have to cut your hair. If you beat me, I have to take off my mask. And in Eddie Guerrero's book, he talks about a time when him and his partner were in Mexico. They were a tag team. And one of the guys in wrestling, it's called a rib, but it's basically they play these pranks on people.
Right.
And he had long hair. And when he was asleep, somebody cut it. And he woke up and he was furious because those kind of matches in Mexico make the wrestlers make crazy money on those kind of matches. It's a big deal to cut your hair. They don't just cut it themselves. They make it, they grow it out. They have it for these matches kind of thing. And the mask thing is so important. Rey Mysterio Jr. wears a mask.
Yes.
It's a mask that he was gifted by his uncle, the original Rey Mysterio.
Right.
When Rey Mysterio wrestled in WCW, he fought a match in like 99, 2000, lost a mask match. So he had to take off his mask. For the last, if you watch any of WCW between 2000 and 2001, which is when they shut down, he had no mask.
Really?
When he debuted in WWE, he had the mask back on because right off the bat, they were like, that's a merchandising opportunity. WWE is very merchandise thing, and they're brilliant at it. When I went to the show last week...
Would the McMahon surprise you by not being that?
Yeah, but it would surprise me that a company like WCW would give up on an opportunity like that. But... going back to that, but I recently read this when doing some research about Mexican wrestling, is that when I think Rey Mysterio came back to WWE in 2002 or 2002. So about a year after WCW.
Did he wrestle at all in WWE prior to that, or
no?
Did he come from
He wrestled in Mexico. He wrestled in ECW for a while, and then he moved to WCW.
See, Rey Mysterio is one of those few Mexican wrestlers that has the charisma, right? That he has the charisma when he talks, right? And he also has the physical charisma that Dwayne was talking about. So that's what makes Rey Mysterio so big. That's what's made him so big.
But it's probably because he's from San Diego.
That too.
He's just a Mexican.
Booyaka,
Yeah.
619.
But so before he came back to WWE, they were like, "We want you to wear the mask." Blah blah blah. So he had to go back to Mexico and get permission from the Mexican Boxing and Wrestling
Association
to wear the mask.
Really?
Because it's serious business.
Because he lost the mask.
He lost the mask match. If you look at any Mexican wrestler's wrestling bio in Wikipedia or whatever, those hair versus mask matches, those mask versus mask matches are listed as separate special matches, almost like their title matches.
It's permanent.
And it's permanent unless you are like Rey Mysterio and get the permission back.
Because one of the things that, if I remember correctly, there was a wrestler he came from AAA. He was a brawler. Triple A. And he had...
Sorry, you mentioned Triple A a few times. What exactly is Triple A?
It's the big wrestling promotion down in Mexico.
You don't know the name, do you?
Yeah. Atletico... what is it again?
Azteca,
something like that.
Association.
Yeah, association.
Jesus Christ, you couldn't figure out the last word?
No, but hold on. So, there was a wrestler. Now, there was a wrestler down there, and his name is Conan. Do you remember Conan?
Conan, yes.
Yeah. So,
Like Arnold
Asistencia
no,
Aceria. Sorry, can you read that?
You're asking him to read?
whoa, that was not part of my deal.
He doesn't know how to read.
Asistencia, asesoría y administración. Oh, wait a minute.
What? That's the original name.
Oh, okay.
The rest is in English. It's not his fault.
Fair enough.
So Triple A is essentially the WWE of Mexico.
Mexico. Okay.
Yes, there's other big wrestling companies in there. There's CMLL and a few others, but Triple A is sort of the big one, and they even have like their WrestleMania, which is called Triple A Mania.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they are.
That's triple awesome.
No, jeez. So they run massive shows. They run massive weekly shows on TV. They have pay-per-views. Essentially, think of WWE in Mexico, except with a 6-sided ring.
Right.
And they have deals with other companies that have they have gringo wrestlers come on.
Funny that you mentioned gringos and going back to the masks again, but I actually read somewhere that the first masked wrestler may have not actually been Mexican, but an American wrestler.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Wrestling in Mexico.
And that happens a lot. Chris Jericho was a big time Canadian wrestler. Wrestled under a mask in Mexico when he wrestled there. He was Lionheart, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were you telling us the story about Conan?
So Conan, in his early career in AAA, he actually had long hair.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But
if you see him now, he's bald.
Yeah, he's bald. And even throughout... and he even appeared in a few Mexican soap operas, and he was actually bald in there. So it just doesn't... That just kind of hits the nail home that when they really do, shave their head, they keep it. It's just even not just for the wrestling.
So
but
he
it goes
shaved his head completely.
Yeah, and it just kept going on.
He bit that shit.
I feel like Conan was also losing his hair, so it's
the right time. In other words, he did a mask or hair match, and lost deliberately so he could clean himself up.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. So.
Manny, I'll never have a mask or hair match with you.
Please never lose that hair, man.
You're so weird.
You're the one with the hair. He's gonna wear the mask. You fucking weirdo. That doesn't scare me as much as you think it does. Anyways,
can I borrow a mask, Dwayne?
Oh, I got a ton. I'll post some of the masks. Actually, I'll take a bit of pictures of the masks.
Oh, do you have that photo of us from? I think it was your anniversary
from last year with both of us in the masks.
Yeah, we're gonna have to share that for.
We also have that photo of me, you, and him in a mask as well at one of my WrestleMania parties.
We have a lot. Yeah, I have a lot of masks.
Yeah,
I have a lot of masks.
I love the masks because they all have like a little story to tell, and they're all so well put together. That there's just cool little things about each of them. Like, unfortunately, you see a lot of Rey Mysterio masks everywhere, and they're cool masks, but they're sort of oversaturated.
That goes back to the merchandising options of the
merchandising.
WWE, right?
And he's the most. I mean, truly, he's now officially the greatest luchador, most successful, greatest luchador wrestler of all time.
Most well known, right? He's got the most recognition.
He's got the most recognition. You just wrestle for the WWE, and like the man is old and is old. He's old for a wrestler right now, and he's had so many knee surgeries, and he's back with the WWE
and he's
now.
still.
And he's incredible. Like he wrestles.
He's still doing that high flying stuff. Eh?
Yeah,
like that. Just recently on Raw a couple of weeks ago, he had that match with Andrade.
Yeah.
Now Andrade is probably like half his age, right? And they still went at it. It was one of the best matches I've seen in a long time.
Was that with you guys his first match back in this recent stint?
Yeah,
because I feel like
I
was
came
there.
back at the Royal Rumble. So
okay, because I remember like you guys were. I thought it was cool because I didn't realize he'd left.
Well, and now his son, who you saw like back in the day as a little kid, now he's actually in the developmental.
Yeah, he's learning how to wrestle as well. He's been learning how to wrestle for a while. I think that was sort of part of the deal that Rey Mysterio did to come back to WWE, is to give his son a shot.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Actually, to this note, if anybody has a chance, there's a. It was on Netflix. It's not anymore. It's a thing called. There's another free streaming service called Tubi TV, Tubi TV, and they carry all 3 seasons of a thing called Lucha Underground. And
I wanted to ask about that.
So Lucha Underground is a TV show that was a sort of a offshoot of Triple R wrestling. It's all in English. It's all Mexican wrestling. It's kind of. Is it
like American produced Mexican wrestling?
It's produced by the guys who do Survivor, and it was on Robert Rodriguez's TV channel called El Rey. So El Rey was like a American Mexican English channel that was created by Robert Rodriguez, who did Desperado and Sin City and stuff like that.
He did all of the El Mariachi
movies. Mariachi movies. So, Lucha Underground has that sort of, if you really want to feel that sort of vibe of Mexican wrestling, but you don't want to go through the Spanish part of it, watch Lucha Underground. It's very TV friendly. It's very like episodic in the way it's created. There's a real like, spirit of Mexico telenovela aspect to it. Really great wrestling. A lot of the wrestlers from there now have ended up on AEW, which was what Manny was talking about last week.
Apparently, WWE. They're like bringing back a lot of old people. I think I saw an ad where they've just announced that they're gonna have what's her name, Jazz, wrestling with them.
That's NWA.
Is that NWA?
NWA. Jazz just recently signed with them, I think. Or maybe she's moved to WWE. I'm not entirely sure. But Awesome Kong, who plays a character on Glow, the TV show, signed with AEW as well.
Who does she play on Glow?
She's the welfare queen.
What?
Yeah.
Oh shit! I never put that together.
Kia Stevens is her name in real life. So.
I've seen in
I'm like I'm near the end of the 3rd season of Glow, and it is amazing.
It's awesome.
I like Chavo Guerrero's cameo in season 2.
Well, he's a wrestling. So back to
the Guerreros. I wanted to ask a little bit more about them because
just quickly on what he's saying.
Yeah,
Chavo Guerrero is the wrestling coordinator on that show. So he's actually in literally his name is in the credits of every episode for the whole series.
The fact, and about the Guerreros, because they actually have a history with Glow, the original wrestling promotion, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, right? Because do you remember which Guerrero it was?
I think it's Chavo Senior or Gory, one of the two. It wasn't Eddie, but it was.
No, I know it was not Eddie. It may have been like one of his older brothers or something like that.
So it's Chavo like Senior or Gory.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the producers of Glow, the Netflix series,
Chavo
asked the Guerreros to come in and be the wrestling coordinators because of the history with the original promotion.
Well, Chavo is also he's a guy who understands the business. He's got a very, 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 he's a 3rd generation wrestler. He's got a very, very good mind for the business. And he's not a kind of guy who has an ego about the business. So he's an excellent wrestler. He was on, WWE TV losing to like to a little person in Hornswoggle, and he didn't care because he just has a great mind for it. And he's one of the guys who was there initially in the Lucha Underground thing as well. He was a producer on that show as well. So he's got a Hollywood background and he knows how to deal with people.
Yeah.
And and I think with Glow especially, they had to be very careful because you had a lot of women who were going to be on the show who were very inexperienced, and unfortunately, to some aspect, wrestling has a bad history with like Me Too and stuff like that Me Too movement kind of stuff, like just people taking advantage, right? So you needed to have somebody who kind of understood that. One of the things that I kind of
love his 80s gimmick. It was such an.
I mean, I've not seen Chavo yet on the show, so quiet.
Okay.
I did see Carlito though, and I was super happy about that.
Carlito was awesome.
If you've watched
Carlito
is the guy with the big fro that's with.
You know
He
what?
plays her brother, right?
You know what?
Carmen's brother.
You know what, Dwayne? All this talk about Eddie Guerrero has made me really, really miss him, especially a lot of his matches.
I love Eddie Guerrero.
You know what? Just to fan out for a second. One of my favorite Eddie Guerrero moments was when he beat Brock Lesnar for the belt.
Oh my God.
And he reversed the F5 into a DDT.
So okay, explain. So an F5 is sort of like you put a guy over your shoulders, and then you swing him around and knock him to the floor.
Yeah.
And
sorry to interrupt. To correct you, it was Mando Guerrero who was the coordinator for Glow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were saying?
So with the F5, as Dwayne was mentioning, it is a move where you put someone on your shoulders, kind of like you were putting them on a torture rack, but then you swing them around. In this particular match, now Brock was beating everybody. He was the monster that WWE created. What made this amazing was that, he had Eddie Guerrero in this move. Okay, it's done. You were expecting it to be finished, but Eddie Guerrero reversed it, and he made it look so good. Eddie Guerrero executed that move perfectly, and 2, Brock sold it so well.
And 2, eh?
Yeah. And Brock sold that amazingly, and it was probably one of the biggest fan moments I had of Eddie Guerrero coming up. Then he went up, he did the frog splash at the top of the
match.
Yeah, and then at the top of the rope, he would always do that little dance.
That
Shoulder.
The man was so charismatic.
He was.
It's a shame.
Yeah, but one of the things about Eddie Guerrero's career was he too, oddly enough, we've been talking about him being like not the Guerrero family not being like luchadors, but he used to wrestle in Japan under a mask, and he'd go by the name Black Tiger. Now, Black Tiger is the bad guy to Tiger Mask, and Tiger Mask is sort of this like legendary wrestler in Japan, in that it's a guy in a tiger mask. It's I'm not sure if it's based on an anime or if an anime was based on it, but either way they live, and the characters of Black Tiger and Tiger Mask just continue. So after wrestlers are done with it, somebody else comes and takes it over.
So they just hand it over to
and this is not something like the company decides who the next person is, and it just keeps continuing and continuing.
So it's like you're
inheriting the feud.
Kind of. You're inheriting this character. This character will never die because it's a character. It's not a person.
It's like the voice of, a television character or something,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was sort of was Japanese wrestling, but not necessarily about Japanese wrestling, but how does one get into Japanese wrestling?
You sign up.
Yeah, you think that was the case.
Wasn't Hulkamania first in Japan?
Hulk Hogan was in Japan. It wasn't
I
first
refer
in
to
Japan.
him as Hulkamania.
Yes. No, he wrestled in Japan for a while.
Isn't that where wasn't that just, was that before Thunder Lips or just after Thunder Lips?
I think it was before. I think a lot of wrestlers would go to Japan. A lot of wrestlers go to Japan to, like, gaijins, they're called. So, like, white guys, essentially.
Yeah.
And they go to Japan on these, like, they would go on tours. So they'd go for like 3 months, 3 weeks, whatever. Go wrestle in Japan, wrestle against these guys. And Japanese wrestling is known as, like, it's strong style. So everything's meant to look like it fucking hurts. And generally it does.
It fucking hurts.
Right? You watch wrestling in Japan. Wrestling in Japan, one is presented, actually, depending on where you're looking at it, but it's either presented very sports style, sports oriented, harder hitting style, or it's presented in a very, like, comical,
yes,
over the top comical way.
It is. Just recently, John Moxley, right? Who we talked about last week.
Dean Ambrose.
WWE. Yeah, he's wrestling in Japan, and I mentioned that he does have a sense of comedic timing, but he's also, he also has that very strong style wrestling. Yeah. So there was recently a clip where he went back and forth with this Japanese wrestler. I forgot his name, for like a good 5 minutes, and they were just talking about buying a DVD.
Yano.
Yeah, and he ended up buying a DVD for like 5,000 yen.
Yeah,
which is fucking ridiculous. Just like the equivalent of like 90 Canadian dollars.
Well, there's, I mean,
Kenny better be made of gold.
Kenny Omega, who's widely considered right now one of the best wrestlers in the world, had one of his first matches in Japan wrestling a blow-up doll, and then another match wrestling an 8-year-old girl.
An
60
8-year-old
Canadian.
girl.
8-year-old girl. Yeah.
He
Wow.
lost, didn't he?
He did.
He lost.
But this is the thing. This is kind of how they sort of promote. So there's this really weird like subculture, odd wrestling, funny wrestling, whatever. And then there's the sports oriented side of it. And New Japan Pro Wrestling is considered very much the second biggest wrestling promotion in the world currently. Definitely the second most popular wrestling promotion in the world.
Was New Japan at some point a member of the NWA?
I don't think so. I think All Japan Wrestling was, and New Japan was sort of broken. Was like an offshoot of
Right.
that. Like the sort of somebody, Inoki, I believe, who was the sort of most popular wrestler at the time, left and started that promotion, New Japan. And New Japan's built in a really like they're so in love with this idea of like being considered as a sport.
Right.
Their logo is a lion. It says the King of Sports around it. Their belt is called the IWGP Championship, which stands for like International Wrestling Grand Prix, I think. And it's like, and it's so like they're like this other organization. It's their belt that we're like promoting, except there is no IWGP.
Right. They are the IWGP.
They are the IWGP.
Yeah.
And it still has a lot of like Western influences to it. Like there's a lot of gimmicks. There's a lot of like stuff, but the matches are very hard. The stories are very like put together. The most famous group to come out of New Japan Pro Wrestling is a group called the Bullet Club, who are basically a group of non-Japanese wrestlers trying to invade New Japan. And their whole gimmick was like they're a bunch of, they're just going to cause ruckus and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But what I find really fascinating about New Japan is how you become a New Japan wrestler. So now if you're a wrestler from another company or whatever, that's cool. Like you're allowed to come in and wrestle and stuff. But if they want to create your own homegrown stars, you have to join the New Japan Dojo. And there's one in Tokyo, there's one in LA. They very recently opened up the one in LA because they're trying to like become big in the States. But the one in Japan, you have to apply to join it. Like Manny said,
to be in the dojo.
Yeah, they will then put you through a rigorous like process, and they will only choose very few wrestlers. Even if like wrestlers who currently wrestle in New Japan suggest, so say I'm in New Japan and I'm like, you know what, I think Joe's a good guy to be in the dojo. They'll be sure, but you have to apply. We're not going to go find you.
Right. So okay, it's like looking for a job type of thing,
yeah,
right?
So if
you say, hey, I just talked to, the guys over here at New Japan Wrestling, and I recommended you to be a dojo, just go apply.
Yeah.
And they'll look at you.
Doesn't mean
there's
you'll
no
get
guarantee you'll get in.
Yeah. But but they won't ever come to you. You have to come to them.
Well, of course.
Right. But there's no like in WWE they'll have guys who go scouts.
They'll have like an actual a sports team or something.
Yeah. If you're in New Japan, you have to come to them. And this dojo
It's like
thing,
the reverse mafia.
Yeah. I don't know.
No.
Wait, I was gonna agree with you, and then I realized you're talking. I'm just so used to somebody talking over here that wasn't you and agreeing with them. So, anyway, they basically, you get in there. Once you're chosen, no, you're not allowed to do that.
No, that's offensive.
Yeah. You're not allowed to do that. You owe us money now.
What?
Yeah, that's a rule we made when you.
And you definitely owe me money.
Yeah.
Is that a finger gun?
That was a finger gun and a wink.
You son of a bitch!
I'm bringing back the old gimmicks.
You cannot.
First of all, that's not a gimmick that was over with anybody. So stop bringing it back.
It's like
so
the
basically,
gobbledygooker.
you join New Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo, and when you join, you have to live in this dojo.
Oh shit!
Yeah, the wrestlers, there'll be like the people they choose to train you is basically like a mentor.
Right.
When you live there, you have to perform menial tasks, cooking, cleaning.
Quick question: Is this sort of strange? It sounds strangely based off of samurai culture.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is.
I feel like this whole process is sort of well, it is in Japan, but I feel like they're using like the samurai culture, or even maybe not the samurai culture, but even just like ninja culture in that sense of like you're in this dojo, you stay here, you do all these other menial tasks because you're in the dojo, just to sort of pitch in like whatever it be in the garden or cleaning or cooking or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and like the wrestlers who run amongst in other dojos, they're just called the young boys. In the New Japan rosters, they're called young lions because of the lion that's on the logo of the New Japan thing, and they constantly wear black boots, black trunks, and when they show up to wrestling shows, they're wearing like they're wearing these red hoodies kind of thing. They're very, very, very much known. Like right off the bat, they're known. When you see them, you know who these guys are.
Right.
A big thing with these guys is if they want to go anywhere, they have to ask permission from their teachers.
Really?
Yeah,
so
they
if
can't
they
just
want to
leave.
like
What
do you mean go anywhere? Like to another?
I want to go to the ramen shop.
Yeah, like
to actually leave the dojo for the day.
Yeah,
like,
if you have to leave, you have to have permission, and you have to be supervised by one of the senpai, which means teacher, essentially.
Really?
Yeah. So the whole idea is built on the idea of, paying your dues, paying respects, being respectful to the wrestlers that came before you. And when you go to wrestling shows, New Japan wrestling shows, you'll always see these guys. They're like around the rings, they're covering up the rings, and what their job is before they wrestle is to make sure that the crowd is protected from the wrestlers, or that the wrestlers are protected from the crowd.
Really?
So they're sort of security. There is security, but there's sort of security. They're also a lot of the times used in wrestling storylines where if a wrestler loses, they'll come out and beat the shit out of these young boys. And their gimmick, their thing is they're not supposed to attack back.
They just take it.
So that's one of the things. Now, a big thing with the training is a lot of their training revolves around safety in the ring, intense physical training, and repeating processes over and over again until simple practices are perfected. Characters, playing to the cameras, all that is way later.
The wax on, wax off method.
Pretty much. And a lot of New Japan wrestling is based on like attention to neck, training the neck and training the back. Because I think, Manny, you've seen that like New Japan wrestling, it is so fucking hard hitting.
Yeah.
Recently, very, very recently, there's been a lot of like stories about wrestlers hurting their necks and actually like breaking their necks and stuff.
Yeah.
So they're like, let's make those two the most important parts, because those two are going to be the parts that are most affected.
Because they also train to cradle the guys when they're doing the moves, to cradle the other wrestler's neck and to cradle their back.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. That's what the whole that's what a lot of luchadors do. In fact, that going back to just Mexican wrestling for 1 second, is that if you are at any point known as unsafe wrestler, you are blackballed.
Yes, you should be.
You are blackballed. Like just to use a quick example from WWF, remember Ahmed Johnson?
Yep.
Ahmed Johnson would be way hard hitting, but he wouldn't protect anyone. He would just be a fucking asshole, right? So he got blackballed.
Yep.
Then you have a very safe wrestler like Bret Hart or even Kevin Owens, right? Yep. Guys like that are very, very safe wrestlers. So you need the equivalent of those in Mexico, in Japan, so you don't injure your other guys. Because that's what it is. Because, I mean, no matter the wrestling promotion, whether it's North American, Japanese, Mexican, wherever else in the world, British, right? When you are going up on the top rope and you're doing a superplex on someone, right? Or you're doing an Hurricane Rana, or you're even throwing them off the top of a cage, you are in a way, you're putting your health and safety in that other person's hands.
Yeah.
Right. So that's exactly why. That's why. And then yes, you do have to toughen up those parts of the body as much as possible, right?
And I think even just basic moves, like you're talking about like big high flying moves, but basic moves even are important. You need to learn how to do those slowly and carefully, otherwise you're going to really hurt somebody or hurt yourself, right?
That's what happened with my brother-in-law.
Yeah. Somebody hurt him?
No, he hurt himself. He pulled a tendon in his arm because he kept practicing the arm drag, the arm bar, and he just kept practicing, and I guess he fucked it up one time, and and the rest is history.
Yeah, like so. Going back to the dojo, Jay White, who's recently a graduate of the dojo, and I believe he's from New Zealand. He had gone through that thing, and he was saying he had just become a world champion recently this year. He said being a young boy is about learning and paying your dues, something that if you mess up, you know about it, and that usually comes with a few thousand squats. But it's where you earn respect, and as everybody here has been through it themselves, the majority of time they had it harder than their day. The training is completely different to anything I've ever done before. It's insanely intense, and when you hear about how many reps of an exercise you have got to do, it sounds impossible. It would start at 10 a.m. and on average last about 3 hours, sometimes longer. It's usually a mix of squats, press-ups, pull-ups, rope climbs, core work, bridging and strengthening your neck, as well as a lot of cardio-based exercises, followed by wrestling drills. The training methods are pretty extreme, but the idea behind it is that if you're struggling here but you keep on doing it, then you'll be able to keep on going when you get tired in a match. But if you give up during training, then you'll give up during a match. So a lot of it is like completely like doing these repetitive things.
It's like the army of wrestling.
Pretty much. And a big thing with that, so eventually once you graduate to a step higher, they allow... another thing that the young boys do...
not so young boy.
Yeah. One of the things the young boys do when they're also taking care of the rings and all that stuff is before the matches start, they'll help set up the ring. They'll help set up all the chairs for the wrestlers to watch, for the audience to watch. And then when they're allowed to finally wrestle, they wrestle sort of the opening dark matches, so the matches that aren't televised on television.
Right.
And they don't come in with any gimmick. They come in with their like dark shorts, dark boots, both of them.
So you have to earn a gimmick.
No, you don't even have to earn a gimmick. They have you come in, they have you wrestle. You don't put in any high crazy moves. They're all very simple. They're headlocks, they're rest holds.
So it's almost like it's very Roman Greco style.
Yeah,
of
you're just learning whatever you would
with.
learn like your first couple of months. You're only allowed to show whatever you can learn.
Think
your
about
first
it this
couple of
way:
wrestling.
when you buy a video game and you go to create your own wrestler, rather than putting any effort in, you just press start. Okay, that's what it's like.
No, but here's the thing: the idea behind it is every single young boy has the same gimmick when they start, which is these guys are extremely green and they just love wrestling. They have a super passion for wrestling.
Right.
So already like the crowd sort of sympathizes with them because they're like, oh, these guys are part of the dojo. They're getting,
they're getting the reps.
They're getting the reps in. And if a young boy ever wrestles somebody with more experience, like a gimmick wrestler, they lose. So they're jobbers, right?
Right, yeah.
They're always seen as the losers.
They'll lose to the 8-year-old girl.
Now, one of the big things with being in a dojo is you go out and you do something called a foreign excursion. So New Japan Pro Wrestling will have deals with Ring of Honor Pro Wrestling, or here in the States, or CMLL in Mexico, and a wrestler will be sent there to wrestle, to learn how to fight, like wrestle in a different promotion completely. One of the bigger examples about this is a guy named Naito. He's a big-time wrestler in WWE, in New Japan Pro Wrestling right now. And the guy you were talking about before, Manuel, Andrade.
Yeah.
So Andrade used to wrestle in CMLL, and he had a group over there, and Naito was part of that group. And when Naito was there, when Naito was in New Japan Wrestling, he was a face, he was a good guy. When he went to Mexico, he had to learn how to deal with the Mexican crowd. And one of the big things that the Mexican crowd would do was they would keep screaming at him, "Open your eyes," because he's Japanese.
Oh, yeah.
Oof. And so Naito developed this thing that he'd walk up to the wrestlers, he'd grab his eye and do that, like he'd open it like that, and he'd basically pull his eye open all the way up.
Basically use his thumb and his index finger to spread
I would say that's subtle racism,
but he would do that to sort of like, he became a heel in Mexico, and then he joined Andrade in this group called
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, Los Inibres. I always have a hard time pronouncing it, but it's LIJ. He's joined Andrade in that group, and he came up with this thing called Tranquilo, and it would be like this, like, I don't give a fuck about anything, right? He took that gimmick back to Japan, and usually when you go on a foreign excursion, if you have learned, the whole idea is for you to learn a different style of wrestling, learn to deal with different crowds, learn to try and get over with different crowds because they don't know who you are. When you come back to Mexico, if you have had a successful excursion...
Mexico or Japan?
Sorry, when you come back to Japan and you've had a successful excursion...
Now say cinnamon.
Cinnamon. when you debut back on New Japan Pro Wrestling, you will have a gimmick. You will probably get a super strong push, which is they will give you a storyline to make you look like a star.
Right.
And a lot of wrestlers come back. They're so different. Like the difference is so jarring from when they've done one of these excursions that the crowd is just like, oh my god, like this guy.
I saw this guy 2 years ago.
I saw this guy like whatever. I saw this guy like 7-8 months ago to a year ago, and he was in black trunks and just like whatever. And he's come back now, and he's this superstar.
Yeah.
He purchased the download material.
The current champion.
He leveled up.
Yeah. The current champion for New Japan Pro Wrestling is a guy named Okada.
Yeah.
Who had come wrestle in TNA, and he like had no gimmick and was kind of it was a fail. The excursion for Okada in TNA was so bad that the relationship between New Japan Pro Wrestling and TNA was severed after that.
Really?
And
what happened?
It was just they just put him in a really weird. They didn't use him properly. They didn't give him the opportunity. And when he came back as this fucking monster. Like he was just this super cool, arrogant heel. And Okada always says, he goes, when I went to TNA, I didn't really learn much about wrestling, but I learned about character. And I learned what to use about character. So, Okada recently became champion again. But before that, he was on I want to say 3.5-year run as New Japan Pro Wrestling champion, like world champion. Mm-hmm. So, which is, in this day and age, having a championship reign that long is insane.
Was he over with the crowd or no?
Extremely.
Where?
In Japan.
Yes, when he came back, he was
okay,
massively,
but he wasn't very well received at
in the
TNA?
States. Yeah, in the States, because his storyline
in his first stint.
Yeah, when he went to TNA, he was basically when he went to TNA for his excursion, they used him as this weird like slave character kind of thing. It wasn't racist. It wasn't necessarily racist. He was Samoa Joe's like lackey kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, he was just used as a lackey.
Yeah,
And you know what? Wrestling promotions do that as well. Like there was just let me go to Mexican wrestling for 1 second.
You son of
I
a
know, right? There was a really good wrestler. He started out in AAA, went to WCW, then went to WWF. Juventud Guerrero.
Hoovy.
He's an arrogant little shit, right?
Yes,
he's
like you said, wrestling's the only sport designed to piss off fans.
But even
no, in real life.
Was he really? I thought it was just his gimmick.
So I'm not sure if WWF punished him with this, but he came out with 2 other Mexican wrestlers, and they were known as the Mexicools, and they came out in rider lawnmowers.
In fairness, though, that storyline was more. It wasn't a punishment. That was just a gimmick. He wasn't. The punishment was he kept fucking up,
right?
And eventually they fired them. They didn't put them on TV. That gimmick was over. People were like into it, but it just didn't.
I actually have one question. I can't think of his name for the life of me, but he's a relatively, I want to say newer, but he's probably not newer wrestler from Japan.
Shinsuke Nakamura.
I think that's who I'm talking about.
Okay.
Now, was he a New Japan wrestler?
Yes. He was a New Japan wrestler. He is still very, they call him the king of strong style. His style was very hard hitting, very, very aggressive. But he's changed it slightly from when he's come to WWE, because that kind of style is very hard to like have a long career from, right?
Right.
And you're basically getting hit in the face and the neck and I will give you this.
He's the Japanese conceptual artist.
And sorry to interrupt you, but I just got a text message from a friend of ours, and he tells Mandy to be quiet.
Oh well, that's lovely.
It's
your roommate?
No,
yeah.
It's Josh. Josh is my doppelganger, and I think he's been on the show.
Dancer
Josh. Dancer Josh. Yes. He's actually on his way if he's not here yet.
Is Tosh trying to build heat with me?
No, but
it wasn't Tash.
Anyways, Josh, he's trying to build heat.
All right, hold on, man.
Yeah, he's gonna hit you with a chair as soon as he walks in.
Just to give you an idea of how this strong style thing is, there's a wrestler in Japan named Shibata. Shibata about 2 years ago had a match with Okada, and a big part of his wrestling gimmick was his finisher was the headbutt. He would headbutt people like crazy.
The Zidane.
And
2006 soccer reference.
Okada and Shibata ended up. The match ended up with Okada winning, and then Shibata basically the ambulance had to come in and take him because he headbutt Okada so hard. A, he broke his neck. B, he lost his eyesight for a month.
Hold on.
Oof.
Who broke it? Who?
Shibata. Shibata broke his own neck when he like headbutted Okada.
The fuck is he? Honda just flying
He is
across.
if you look at him, he is a strong like tank of a man.
So he's Honda just fucking flying.
No, he's not a fat guy. He's
is his second
that's
finisher
sort
a
of the-
1,000-hand slap?
yeah, but that is the style of wrestling that I was talking about. So I'm just I know we're kind of coming to the end of here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about that.
Do they prefer like a more ball and brash type of
Yeah,
style? Then, is what you're
exactly.
saying?
And I think that's sort of what I wanted to kind of convey with this episode was that, like, we just talked about Mexico, which is more of this like acrobatic, beautiful style of wrestling,
right, and then
there's Japan that has this more like hard style of wrestling. You go to-
harder, like a lot more.
And then
Would
losing
you
to
say
an
it's more
8-year-old girl.
brutal?
yeah, it would be a little sports oriented.
Oh, look who it
Whatever.
is!
So, to that regard, like if you are talking about British wrestling or whatever, they have more of a like catch and can style is what it's called.
Right.
So if you think wrestling, you're not just thinking don't just think about WWE. There's other styles. There's other things. It might be something that catches your eye. That would be different, right? So
Just thinking
What's the matter?
Just thinking British wrestling is just a couple of wrestlers chasing around the ring to the Benny Hill theme. That's it. That's every week's
it's sad we
episode.
can't even like reenact this with you and us.
You can't even run.
I can't. Assholes.
That's not our fault.
Yeah. Anyways, Dancer Josh is here.
Josh, say hi.
Hello. Over many microphones.
He looks so different without his dreads.
It wasn't dreads; it was cornrows.
God rolls, even worse.
That's below the belt.
What did I miss?
Yeah. Anyways, okay.
Man, he is so confused. It's great.
You'd probably get it if you listen to the podcast. Anyway, Manny, you want to close this up for us?
Yeah, man, do it in Spanish, or can you do it in Japanese?
No, please, God.
No, that'll end up being a hate crime
Yes.
at the end of this.
He's already wanted over there for fucking fighting with the Airbnb guys there. Remember?
Oh yeah. Okay.
And
Yes.
the senator in the Philippines wants him dead too.
Y esto concluye el capítulo número 82 de No Inner Monologue. Despidiéndonos es tu Norona, el guapo John Mangione y yo, Manuel, tu tío favorito.
Did you say El Guapo?
I said el guapo.
Oh dear God.
That's offensive.
No,
Please.
it's not. I said el guapo.
I don't
El
know.
guapo means handsome.
You didn't say El Guapo.
He said El Guapo.
All right. Let's end this. He just got it. All right, let's end this.
Son of a bitch.
All right, we'll see you next combo number 5.